The Lifestyle Show.
Selena McKenzie.
Now, it is our medical day today, and our first guest has been on the show a couple of times before, but it's always good to get him on to talk about stress. Welcome back to the show, Neil Shah.
Thank you, Selena. It's always a pleasure.
So, we all get it at some time in our lives. Can you explain to us what stress actually is?
Well, it's interesting because in modern society, we seem to demonize stress and attach it to all of the challenges and evils we face on a daily basis. But we need stress. If it wasn't for stress, we wouldn't be sat here today having this conversation, because our species would quite literally have died out hundreds of thousands of years ago. It's the driving force that prepares us to fight hard or run fast when faced with a threat or a challenge. So we need it as a driving force. The challenge is, for most of us, it's become very black or white. I'm stressed or I'm not stressed. Whereas I ask you to consider, and all of our listeners today, to consider more like Goldilocks and the Three Bears. You know, when Goldilocks stumbles into the cottage, she finds 3 bowls of porridge. One's too hot, one's too cold, and one's just right. If we had no stress, you'd never get anything done. You wouldn't get out of bed in the morning.
Yeah, you'd be too laid back, wouldn't you?
Absolutely. I'm sure some of us know people like that. At the other end of the spectrum, when it's too much, is when you're going to burn out, you're going to feel exhausted. It's really hard to sustain yourself in a high level of stress. So it's about finding that state where, yes, it may be stress, it may be a little bit of a push, a challenge, a little bit of demand that keeps you moving through life, that keeps you raising the standard of how you show up on a daily basis. And that, for me, is not so much, am I stressed, am I not stressed? It's more, is the level of stress I'm experiencing appropriate for the situation I'm in and the challenge I'm facing? For example, me talking to you today, if I had no stress about how this was going to go, I wouldn't be able to perform at my best. But if it's too much, I'd probably forget everything I was going to say, stumble over my words, and probably have a bit of a meltdown. So it's finding that appropriate level for me to be able to have this conversation, deliver the best of my ability, but not end up with it being too hot, too cold.
So do you think even probably a little bit of extreme stress is good for us because it makes us stronger ultimately? Of
course, you know, I've been hearing about some of these kind of crazy experiences happening on mainland Europe with the extreme weather causing wildfires. If there's an emergency and you need to remove yourself from danger, you really want to hope and pray that you get stressed, because it will equip you to take action. And, you know, if you're facing imminent danger, it's better to do something than do nothing. I know we've all had moments and experiences when we're highly stressed, we take a course of action. It might not have been the best one, but you do something. When you're not so stressed, you're more likely to stop and think about, well, what do I do? How do I deal with this? And there are times where it's better to not think and just to take action. If you're playing competitive sport, you know, stress is going to be a great driving force. Even something simple like running for a bus, a train, or a plane, it's going to equip you to be able to engage in that activity to the best of your ability. Once you catch the bus, train, plane, or whatever it is that you're chasing after, you can relax. And that's how stress was designed, as a short-term intervention, give you that extra boost of energy to deal with the situation at hand.
Yeah, I suppose if you didn't get stressed about things, it means you don't care, doesn't it? Because otherwise you wouldn't get stressed if you didn't care about whatever it is you're doing.
To a degree, and I think this also comes down to the way we use language, because we tend to attach the term stress to all the negative experiences. There are moments where you are stressed, but you're excited and looking forward to what you're going to do. And you use different language. You might say, oh, I'm pumped up, I'm excited, I'm ready for action. Biologically speaking, under the bonnet, it's the same process that's happened. It's the same hormones that are produced, the same physiological changes that are occurring. It's just, in a positive situation, you don't tend to call it stress, even though technically speaking it is. And I think this is really where we have to look at our use of language. You know, we've got to a point where we are using the term stress in a negative way, attached to a lot of negative experiences. And when there is an experience of stress that isn't negative, we just use different language for it.
Okay, yeah, no, I see what you're saying. But I think if I was saying, oh, I'm going on holiday tomorrow and I'm really stressed, people would look at me very strange.
And to be fair, that wouldn't be far off the truth, because, you know, you start to get yourself to holiday and like packing and get to the airport.
Yeah, that is something. That's true. Yeah, you're right. So how can people, if any of our listeners are listening, and we're not talking about, the basic stress. Some people can get very overly stressed, very anxious. Can you give any advice on how to sort of calm yourself down a little bit?
Yeah, so it's interesting. Whenever we have these kind of conversations, people are looking for the quick fix. What do we do? How do we deal with stress? How do we take ourselves out from stress? We already know the answer to that. And I think the campaign that we're really heavily focused on right now is not necessarily giving people more information. Because I was finding, particularly over the last couple of years, when you spend time talking to people and say, oh, well, you should really consider turning your technology off, take some time for meditation, journal, etc. People are like, you're stressing me out. You're giving me more to do. Like, I've already got a busy, packed life. Now you're asking me to find time to do all of these things that supposedly will improve my well-being. And you ask people what the basic things that we need to do to improve our health and well-being. Everybody knows we should drink 2 liters of water a day, eat 5 bits of fruits and vegetables, walk 10,000 steps, sleep 7 or 8 hours a night, but nobody does it. And I think we've actually come to the point of realization it's not about introducing more information. It's about getting people to understand, well, what are the barriers to doing the things that we already know, let alone introducing new things? We all know these basic things, yet we don't follow them. We know that, for example, excessive consumption of sugar is bad for us. Alcohol, nicotine, this is common information. Yet we still have barriers to people acting on that information. So I guess the question to really ask yourself is, where is your well-being on your priority list? And if you had to do 5 things to improve your well-being, what would they be? So rather than us telling people what to do, actually looking at, well, what do you already know that you're not taking action on? So, Selena, let me ask you, if there were 3 things that you could commit to right here, right now, that you know will improve your well-being, what would they be?
Oh, my goodness, don't put me on the spot like this. I can give you one, and I can tell. Well, actually, I can give you 2. I can give you one. It would be a lifestyle change. Maybe at the weekend, not drink so much alcohol, as you say. But I think overall, it would be not to take too much on. I sort of find myself sometimes firefighting because I'm doing different things, and I probably get a bit overwhelmed with it sometimes.
Of course, and thank you for being open and vulnerable. Now, let me ask you, what are the barriers to you reducing the amount of alcohol you consume on the weekend or to taking on too much? Now, again, that information came from you. I'm not telling you what to do in any way, shape or form. If you've come up with these ideas, for me to be sure that you will have the follow through to take action against it, we need to consider what will prevent you from doing these things. So have you got any thoughts as to what could prevent you taking action on these things?
Well, the obvious thing would be to stop taking too much on. But to be honest, if I'm totally honest, I like it. I like to be busy. I like to be doing things to help other people. And by the time it gets to Friday night, I haven't had a drink all week, and I think I blinking well deserve one.
And this is the thing, going through this kind of process, we can have an internal self-dialogue and start to understand, well, what is really important to us? What are we going to commit to? Because otherwise what will happen, we put out information, people are like, yeah, that's a great idea, but nothing happens. 3-4 days later, your life goes back to normal. And what we've got to appreciate is we're actually talking about one of the biggest issues on the planet today. Mental health kills more people under the age of 50 than pretty much anything else. The main cause of death for a man under the age of 45, rapidly becoming the same for a 15 to 29-year-old. Yet, even though some of the actions, some of the things that we can do to address it are pretty straightforward, we haven't got to the point where we've been able to compel people enough to take personal action. And this is really what we're about right now, is not necessarily, here's 5 things that you can do. I wrote a book called The 10-Step Stress Solution, and everybody bought it. But how many people follow through with those actions on a long-term basis? And these are the things that we need to consider right now, is we are living quite literally in an episode of Black Mirror. There's things that have happened over the last 3 years. Make it up. And Selena, I think the last time I was on, I can't remember if it was with yourself or it was another channel, but I used to joke about, based on the current trajectory, the next thing that will happen is aliens are going to attack. And that was me being absolutely ridiculous. Last week, there was a US Senate committee hearing where they were debating declassifying the information that US government hold on UAPs, in layman's terms, is UFOs. It's science fiction is now science reality. It's like, forget going to Netflix. Looking at the news and social media is more fantastic than anything you can find out of Hollywood. When we've got to that point, people start to become desensitized. When you run from crisis to crisis, people kind of tune out for it. You don't get the anxiety response. After a while, you get people that just like apathy, indifference, because it's like, you can't scare me anymore because the world is just a crazy place. And I think this is really where tune out from the external reality. What do I want to be experiencing internally? And how am I going to take action to look at my internal landscape? Because there was a famous quote, I'm pretty sure it was Mahatma Gandhi, said, if you want peace in the world, you need to create peace within ourselves. If we want to tackle the issues around stress and mental health and overwhelm that we are finding in the world that we live in, the place to start is internally and look at how am I going to address that within myself. Very much like when you get on a plane, before you put an oxygen mask on someone else, you've got to put it on yourself first.
Exactly, yeah, that was going to be my next point, actually, because that's a great line. I mean, you can't look after somebody else if you're not looking after yourself first, can you?
Absolutely. And I think, we do live in a world where, what's one of the common phrases? It's better to give than to receive. A lot of people don't appreciate the true origins of that phrase. It's actually a Greek proverb. The original proverb was, it's better to be in a position to give than to need to receive. It was true. It was changed in the 4th century by an organization that wanted to use that phrase for their own benefit. So they wanted people to give on a Sunday afternoon. So they changed it. But actually, they didn't just change the phrase. They actually changed a cultural narrative. If we look after ourselves, that's not being selfish. It's being selfless, because the people that do take care of themselves are in a better position to help, support, and care for those around them. So this is one of the things I put out to everyone listening today. Are you prioritizing your health and well-being? Are you putting yourself number one? Because if you are, you're going to have a cup that has enough to pour to those around you. Yeah,
good point. And I do see what you're saying about the world around us today. I mean, I think everybody was shocked by the pandemic when that first happened. And I remember walking down the street here in Spain and, all the barriers were up and everyone had all the shops had perspex and everyone was wearing masks. And it was a bit like, oh my goodness, we've entered the twilight zone. I didn't think I would ever see this in my lifetime. So you just don't know what's around the corner, do you?
Absolutely. I can't joke about aliens attack anymore because it looks like that's actually potentially true. The only thing left to joke about is mushrooms turning people into zombies. And that was a Netflix box set up until a few months ago. Who knows what's going to happen next? I am literally running out of things to joke about now because everything crazy seems to be coming true. So this is really where, we have no control of what happens outside of ourselves. Yeah. We have absolutely over how we choose to react and respond to external events. And this is really where power comes in. The word power literally means the ability to do or act. The person with the greatest power has the greatest ability to do or act. Our role as an organization is to empower people, to give them the ability to make better choices that serve them. So this is really where I encourage, again, everyone listening today, what can we do to start reclaiming our personal power, which we can then use to better our communities, our society, and our species, hopefully.
Yeah. Well, there is so much on your organisation. Our listeners can go to stress.org.uk. There is so much information on there. And it's always great to chat to you, Neil. Thank you for being on the show. And next time we chat, who knows, we might have aliens and zombies.
Thanks, Selena. Lovely to talk to you as always.
You too. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Clear, concise, current reporting throughout the day. TRE, your voice in Spain.